There it is, gang. The fabled mailing address. TPOS. That's me. That's my record label. That's where I take the mail. TPOS P.O. Box 3626, Newtown, Connecticut 06470. That's where I, the operator, am standing by to receive your mail, your missives, your communications. You, the frantic fans, loyal listeners, and absolutely vivacious viewers of Tent Talks Tunes. Hello, Robopuff Law, tuned in right now, right here, live on the Facebook. And greetings to everybody who is not only tuned in here live on Facebook, but might be tuned in the future, because the future, as you know, is where our destinies lie. On my YouTube channel, just look up Malcolm Tent on the YouTube, and scroll down on my Facebook page, and you'll see many episodes of Tent Talks Tunes archived on my permanent record. So yeah, speaking of records, we're going to talk about a lot of records today, but not until we do our weekly mail call. I love to share my mail with all of you guys. This is better than sharing dirty laundry, better than sharing state secrets. There's a reason why I post this address every single week, because I love getting mail, and I also love sending mail out. I love exchanging stuff. It takes me back to the good old days, and I don't even like to use a term like that because every day is good. Wake up in the morning, might be sunny, might be cloudy. We're here, we're breathing, we're alive, so it's good, and there's a lot of good stuff happening. So good old days, good new days. Hello, Bean Pie. Nice to have you on board. Good old days, good new days, but I'm referring to the old days, which were actually also good, in which we would exchange stuff by mail. The punk rock scene, as I grew up in it, was founded on the mail. Magazines going back and forth, postcards going back and forth, flyers going back and forth, cassettes and records, people constantly trading and exchanging information that way. And it's, it's cool that we got the internet, because the information is fast. Like, for a long time, I've had this morbid obsession with the fake Deep Purple. And that's something you can look up right now. If you actually use the keywords bogus Deep Purple, just on a whim this afternoon, I looked up bogus Deep Purple after wondering what was the deal with bogus Deep Purple for years and years and years. One click of the internet, and I got more about the bogus Deep Purple than I ever thought existed, including video, in-depth research articles, photos. Fantastic. So that's really cool, and I like that. That of course led to research into the bogus Steppenwolf and all these really weird back currents and eddies and stagnant pools of musical history that I find to be at least as interesting as the story of the real Deep Purple or the official Steppenwolf. The fakes and the boguses and the forgottens are really fascinating. So it's cool that you can do that on the internet, but it's also really cool that you can go to the post office or your own mailbox on your front doorstep and find a postcard from someone like Dylan Hauser, aka Hell Garbage, and his new noise project entitled Spiral Tanks. I've had the pleasure of sharing the stage with Dylan a number of times in Orlando, Florida. He's a noise artist. I do my solo acoustic hardcore thing, and we've always had good shows. So Dylan, thanks for the postcard. Thanks for yet another mysterious cat image. We who love our cats love mysterious cat images. Also in the mail, got a New Year's card from none other than the infamous and or famous Dino Sex. Dino, the naked drummer, who I'm in a band with. I'm in the band They Hate Us, with the world-renowned Dino of the Murder Junkies, and he sent me a very nice New Year's card. And so in return, I'm going to send him one of my New Year's cards. I know a few of you people out there have received my New Year's card. You send me a card, I'll send you a card. So Dina's going to get this 2021 New Year's card from me, Malcolm Tent. Because I know Dino's not on the internet, so that'll be a total surprise for him. It's not a spoiler. It's cool that way, baby. It's cool. Hello, Genevieve Michaud. Thank you for tuning in. A toast to Genevieve. She was the lead singer of, ooh, really parched here. Oh boy, I can say the word now. Windfall. Smorgasbord recording artists. Windfall. That was Genevieve. She was the singer. Let's see who else is tuned in. Yeah, we got a few people here. Something else I got in the mail is from my main dog, Dennis Highland, from Jackhammer Records in Mobile, Alabama. They released the most recent Anti-Scene offering, which is a split between us. I can't believe I can say us. I'm in that band now. I'm in the band. I mean, look at it. That's me. Anti-Scene. That's me. I still can't believe it. I'm marking out. Between us and our good friends Before I Hang from Hattiesburg, Mississippi. I think the record is sold out. Not sure about that. Maybe, Dennis, if you're watching now or later, you can chime in and let us know if this is still available. But Dennis and his label put that out. And Dennis also sent me a care package featuring a few things. The No Matrix 7-inch, split with Fortune Hate, it looks like. Just got this. I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet. Look at that, red vinyl. I love the colored vinyl. Haven't had a chance to check that out or this. Now, Dennis has got me pegged. If you watch me and you've watched Tent Talks Tunes, you know that I have very interesting taste. So Dennis sent me this 8-track. And you know I did a whole episode on 8-tracks very recently. Here's an 8-track entitled Working the Electric Screwdriver. And of course, the second I opened it up and saw the word screwdriver, my first thought was, what? Screwdriver? The racist skinhead man had an 8-track? But no, it's spelled with a C as opposed to a K. And I've never seen this on vinyl. And this is one of those wonderful, cheesy cash-in exploitation covers records. It's got Honky Tonk Women, Light My Fire, Everyday People, and then apparently some original compositions. There's one called Ears of Stone. That's intriguing. Time to Realize, Boys and Girls. So yeah, this has a lot of promise for being like a totally sleazy, cheesy truck stop 8-track. Production values are higher than your average truck stop 8-track, but this could very well be an 8-track only, really cheesy covers album. So I'm definitely looking forward to popping this into the old 8-track player and seeing just how bad it really is. I have faith it'll be bad. So Dennis, thank you so very much. I'll get something in the mail to you. And then, the creme de la creme, I couldn't believe it when I opened up this one. Oh my God. On another recent episode of Tent Talks Tunes, I addressed the very burning and totally bizarre issue of why anybody would have 14 Devo albums. And I went into great laborious detail as to why I have 14 Devo albums. Does this look right? It's not quite a string bow tie, is it? It should have 2. There we go. 2 danglies. Now I'm well balanced. Why anybody would have 14 copies of the first Devo album, and I related the long-winded story of how it was Cream magazine, November 1978 issue with The Who on the cover, and how I didn't have one. Well, my old pal Doug Finkelstein, the former publisher of Finkelzine, and General No Goodnick, he was one of those dudes who would come into my old store, Trash American Style, and just hang around for hours and hours and be a total pest. Love the kid, though. We could always talk about B-grade movies and cheap VHS, like straight-to-VHS movies, kind of like straight-to-8-track albums. And he and that No Goodnick Jay Horton were always a lot of fun to have around. So Jay took it upon himself, take 2. Doug took it upon himself to actually find and mail me the issue of Cream magazine from November 78, which put me on the path of righteousness that I've been on for the last 42 years. Because as I talked about, The Who on the front, Kiss on the back, But then scrolling through it and all the advertisements for Aerosmith and Leonard Skinner and Robin Trower and, The Who and, well, Alice Cooper and more Who and more Kiss, all of a sudden there it was. The full page ad that literally changed my life. And now I have a hard copy of it. Thank you, Doug. I appreciate it more than you can imagine. I've got a little something in the mail for you coming soon. So thanks, everybody. I appreciate it endlessly. I love getting it, and I love sending it out. Let's relive the halcyon days of punk rock glory and get those trade networks going. It's cool. It's fun. Now, let's talk about tunes, because this is indeed Tent Talks Tunes. Got to admit, gang, I woke up, and even for the past couple of days, I had no idea what I was going to talk about. Normally, I've got a bunch of ideas, and I'll give you a little bit of a clue, and Doug, you're going to like this. One of the reasons why I'm kind of empty-minded today is because I had to focus a lot of energy on an interview I did last night with a guy named Bob Lewis. Bob Lewis is one of the two co-founders of, you guessed it, Devo. That's right. Long before there was a Mark Mothersbaugh, there was Bob and Jerry, and those are the two guys who formed Devo. So I had the first of what I hope to be a number of interviews with him last night. And I have, of course, just like shell-shocked, gobsmacked, mind-blown, crater-brained. There's nothing left of my psyche after a cataclysmic event like that. So I was just like really not thinking too much. So I left it up to you, the people, to tell me what to talk about. And so I started a poll, as I did once before, and I had everybody post their favorite letter between A and Z. And depending on what letter got the most votes, I would talk about something relating to that letter. So we got one vote each for S, G, Q, B, L, X, H, S, oh, 2 for S, sorry, F, M, and C. So we got 2 for S, 2 for L, 2 for J, 2 for A, 2 for P, and only one letter in the entire alphabet got 3 votes, and that was D. D. I don't know why, but D got the greatest number of votes. Probably just because I go on and on and on about D for Devo, D-E-V-O from O-H-I-O. It's always about the D. So D got the most votes. So what I did was I went into my musical library and picked out a stack of records from the D section to talk about. And not one of them is a Devo record. Imagine that. No Devo. But some very cool and very fun records from the D section of my library. So we're going to take a little trawl through the vault and see what's in the D section of my personal collection. Before we do that, I'm going to scroll down and see who else I should be saying hello to. Hey, there's Doug himself. Thanks, Doug. And let's see, Jill Elizabeth, and there's Dennis. Yes, thank you, thank you. All right, here are some fun D records. Don't know if I talked about this one before. I might have. This is a picture disc by a band called DC Star. I don't know if my low-res camera can really pick it up, and of course there's the reflection of the monitor screen on the record. But these guys are a hair glam metal act from Washington, D.C. I believe about 1986 is when they put out this picture disc LP and at least one other album. The reason I love this record so much, not just because of the way they look. Yeah, you can actually see them a little bit better. This one guy in particular. That guy is a DC Star. You can look any way you want, man. I don't care what you look like. That's your right and that's your prerogative. I mean, look at this specimen. It's hardly the best looking thing you've ever seen on TV. But the thing is, when you put yourself in front of the public eye, you invent public comment. People can say anything they want. So I'm going to say anything I want about that guy. Boy, it's a DC Star. The best thing about this record, besides that particular dude who's probably the drummer, is this one song on here. Okay, remember, it's these guys, they look like that. A song called Don't Call Me Punk. Yes, Don't Call Me Punk. It's got the best lyric in the world, besides the chorus, which is don't call me punk, is this one immortal two-line couplet. Fighting with my music, this evil new wave scene. And then something about being caught in a nightmare and is it just a dream? What can I say? With lyrics like that and warriors like this battling the evil new wave scene, you know this is a classic. It is a permanent resident in the D section of my personal collection. Any members of DC Star out there, you are welcome to write in with commentary, rebuttal. I'll interview you. I would love to know the story of this band, because with all bands there's a story. And I got to tell you, I am on the opposite side. I'm not just new wave, baby. I'm punk rock. I am hardcore. But I'm always interested in the opposing viewpoint. So this is kind of a challenge. DC Star, if you're out there, contact me. Let's talk. Let's do an interview. Let's have a debate on the merits of looking like this versus looking like this. I think it'll be fun. I really do. A lot of fun. A toast to fighting the evil new wave scene. And a toast to those of us who have won the war. Just saying. Next up in the D section, this is one of those bands that probably nobody knows about, but I love this group. And I really shouldn't say that, because every time I bring out one of these bands and I think nobody knows who this is, I'll get a million comments from people saying, yeah, I love this band that you didn't think anybody ever heard of. I have all their records. So let's see who of you people out there, and let's see, we got a lot of people chiming in. Stephen Young says Dead Milkman. Xander Drake loves the glasses. Thank you. I can't read the fine print without them. And if there's anything I learned in the music business, you've got to learn how to read the fine print. Otherwise, you get the shaft. And that's a key component of the story of the bogus Deep Purple I was relating earlier. Rod Evans did not read the fine print, and it led to trouble. Let's see. Doug Finkelstein says I look like... Oh, the DC Star guy looks like Doug Henning. Yes. Larry Mann's in the house. My oldest BFF, Jill Elizabeth, is saying Disco Duck. Dr. Demento, she knows me. But does she know Deaf School? Do you guys know Deaf School? Do you know this U.S. release of their first 2 albums as one double LP? This is a great band. Deaf School from Scotland, late 1970s. And this was this is a product of that magic era when punk rock had sort of come and gone and crested, but new wave was waiting in the wings, and the record labels were signing pretty much any new wave band that they thought they had even a remote chance of making a buck off of. It was a golden era. One of the golden eras. One of many golden eras for discovering new music. The new wave era, which for me crested around 1981. But it's because of that Deaf School from Scotland was able to get a couple of albums out in the States. And these are plentiful. They're not rare. I usually find them in the cheap bins. I think I paid $1 for this one. I think I've paid $1 for almost every. See, Bill Plenge, he knows Deaf School from Curmudgeon Records. He knows. I've not paid very much money for this at all. But, you know, the song titles right off the bat. What a Way to End It All. Where's the Weekend? Hi Joe Hi. What a Jerk. everything for the dancer. Hypertension, yeah, yeah, yeah. Come on, guys, that indicates greatness, and it's great. It's like it's the kind of new wave that I love. It's quirky, it's intelligent. Every musician in this band is top shelf. The cover graphics are awesome. That's the front cover of that album. The inside cover, of course, tells the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey would say, if you can focus in on that. It's intelligent, it's well played, it's smart, and it's funny. And best of all, it can still be had cheap. So that's my recommendation when you're prowling the used bins. Look for Deaf School. Really good stuff. Another D record. And we're of course we're still talking about that golden era when the record companies thought they could cash in on new wave. There was that subgenre that happened in the new wave era, and that was the angry singer-songwriter. You never would have thought that'd be a movement, but it was, I guess, or it kind of could have been, the angry singer-songwriter. As is the case, so often it's all Elvis Costello's fault. Elvis Costello got signed to Columbia Records in the U.S. and started selling a lot of records. You know, even those slovenly morons at Rolling Stone gave him good reviews. So Elvis Costello, all right, respectable, good artist, sells a pretty fair number of records. Who else you got? Well, Joe Jackson. Can't deny Joe Jackson. That's real good stuff, man. And yeah, he sold a pretty fair number of records. Ooh, all right. So Elvis Costello, Joe Jackson. What else you got? Graham Parker? All right, Graham Parker. I don't think he's quite on the same level as those other two dudes, but he's still pretty respectable. Still sold a few records. Toured relentlessly, hard worker. Sure, Graham Parker, why not? What else you got? Oh, well, what else have we got? We got, here's an angry young singer-songwriter. Tom Dickey. Huh? Yeah, Tom Dickey. Tom Dickey and the Desires. This record is so new wave, it's ridiculous. Tom Dickey and the Desires. You can see the front cover. You can see the back cover. Whole lot of posing going on. You know, this is the evil new wave scene that DC Star was struggling so mightily against. This is the enemy right here, man. Tom Dickey and the Desires. Head-to-head clash to the death with DC Star. This is brutality. This is bloodshed. This is mayhem. This is war. War. Look at these guys. They can't peacefully coexist. I got to put them down. It's mayhem, kids. Here. Ugh. Tranquila. Good DC Star. Tom Dickey and the Desires on Mercury Records. Mercury, the same home of Graham Parker. The same record label that Graham Parker wrote a song about called Mercury Poisoning. So you can guess what that relationship was like. Yeah, Mercury, they hadn't cashed in enough with old Graham Parker, so they signed Tom Dickey and the Desires, whoever the fuck Tom Dickey is. And they cranked out a couple of albums. The second one, in my opinion, is completely, utterly, thoroughly mediocre. I found it for $1. I thought, oh wow, the second Tom Dickey, you know, this is the first. I'll pay $1 for the second one. I did. Disappointed, let down. It's dull, it's boring. Caca-doo-doo. Lousy record. The first Tom Dickey and the Desires record, it's mediocre. It's boring. It's average. Tom Dickey, if you're out there, I'm sorry. Maybe you were a fiery live performer. Maybe the record company neutered you. Maybe you took some bad career advice. But this record is pretty lukewarm. It's pretty tame. It's pretty watered down. except for one song. There's one bona fide classic, absolute classic power pop song on this album. And as usual, as my good friend Andy Winnick says, this album's front loaded. They put the strongest stuff right there, side one, track one. They kind of sucker you in. A song called Downtown Talk. God damn, that song is good. That song is so good and so catchy and so hooky and so tasty. You're like, yeah, Tom Dickey and the Desires. Where can I find them? Where can I book them? Where can I join their fan club? I need this. But then the album goes on and, you know, your enthusiasm level just kind of deflates as time goes on. I'll reiterate, maybe they were a kick-ass band live. I don't know. But this one song, Downtown Talk, that's worth the $1. That's worth paying the buck for. That is $1 well spent. That's another one of my recommendations for you people. Tom Dickey and the Desires. One song on one album. Hello, Sean Fairweather, the artist formerly known as Bucky. Hello, Dorian James. Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, Aldo Nova. Aldo Nova. I don't know if Aldo Nova could fit into the angry singer-songwriter. He sounded more anxious. Tom Dickey. Aldo Nova. How about Elton Motello? Elton Motello was great. A little bit tongue-in-cheek. The awesome twink of the Pink Fairies was involved with Elton Motello somehow. He was apparently a real singer-songwriter. How about this one? Robert Derby. Right off the bat, the album entitled I Am Normal. You can tell where this guy's coming from. What is he? Is he Wasmo Nariz? Is he Scafish? What's up with this guy and these weird-ass angry singer-songwriter dudes in their bands? Robert Derby. This is on a weird label from New York City called Catch-A-Lot Records. And Catch-A-Lot had some really cool stuff on it. Just about everything I've seen on the Catch-A-Lot label has been great. I don't know if you can see their logo. Their logo is this whale. And it's one word, Catch-A-Lot. Look them up. They've been defunct forever and ever and ever, and I don't think any of their stuff is in print anymore. But in my experience, everything on Catch-A-Lot's been really good. And that includes Robert Derby. He's normal. This song is just packed with hits. This album is packed with hits. Basically every song on side one except for one, and about half of side two. Classics. This record's gotten a lot of play on my radio show, which is called Mr. Tent's Wild Ride, and normally airs on WNHU West Haven on Mondays at 7 p.m. when we'll be allowed to do it again, when the old normal comes back. But yeah, Robert Derby. Totally obscure, totally weird, really good. I have nothing to gain by liking this record, and probably neither does Robert Derby. Robert Derby, if you're out there, I want to hear from you. I want to know your story. I want to know the story behind this album. I want to know if you ever played any live shows. I want to know who was in your band. This is a mystery. I want to know about Catch-A-Lot Records and how they were able to release so many great titles. Damn! Let's use this internet for something good. All right, here's another one from the D section. Another strange, mysterious D record. Once again, we've got the internet, and for years, it was kind of the same deal, this recurring theme. I'd always see this guy's 12-inch singles in the cheap bin, and they always looked really interesting. This was the first one I ever got. A very odd-looking record by a guy named Dr. York. Strange-looking cover. And on the back, you've got kind of a strange-looking guy. That's Dr. York himself. And old Dr. York, he cranked out a bunch of stuff, man. This is the You Can't Hide record. This is one called Always and Forever. Here's another version of You Can't Hide. I guess maybe it's the promo version or some kind of disco 12-inch remix or something. You know, generic packaging. Here's another one where he's, you know, coming across as kind of a lover man or something, and, you know, another portrait on the back, but also kind of a clue on the back of this one. Kind of a clue as to what this guy's about. Ah, there's the key. We got some symbology there. Blessed is the person who walks in God's way, with some iconography. All right, this adds an interesting dimension to Dr. York. And it turns out that Dr. York had this pretty good religious racket going on. Bit of a cult that he was a head of. And it, of course, ended in ruin, as these things typically do. I don't think there was any bloodshed or anything like that, but it did fall apart at some point. And the legacy, though, lives on. There's all these records by Dr. York, and the music itself is, you know, it's typical 80s R&B. It's a lot of sizzle, not much steak. But just the fact that this guy was a cult leader in New York makes it interesting. So I got a bunch of Dr. York records, and I know I'm missing a few, but it's the same deal. I'm not going to pay, you know, collector's prices for them. There's no need to. There's plenty of them. They're out there. There's tons of Dr. York records out there. So anytime I find a record by cult leader Dr. York for $1, I pick it up. To Dr. York, in whichever penitentiary you reside in now, a toast to you and your recorded output. Thank you. Got one more here from the D section. I found this one at a flea market for $1. And this is also a great illustration of, once again, the recurring theme of tent, talks, tunes. The absolute sleaziness, cheesiness, and shameless anything for $1 nature of the record business. Which is why I hate them and why I love them. Because the major labels are so greedy, so avaricious, short-sighted, and so desperate for their quarterly report to look good that they will quite often inadvertently create something artistic. Art that is born out of almost pure cynicism and pure artlessness is sometimes some of the best art. Speaking of best art, Neil from up there in good old windy Buffalo says he just got back from Legoland. People were lined up for blocks. Thank you, Neil. Good night. I'm the star of the show here, and don't you forget it. Dorian James has made a mention of the Ashwan Batish record. Aswin Batish, Raga Roll. That's a cool one to look up if you're into Bollywood. And do I remember the Zeising brothers? The Zeising brothers? Don't know anything about the Zeising brothers. Clue me in, please. If it's as interesting as Dr. York, or Robert Derby, or Tom Dickey and the Desires, I need to know, and so do the people. So anyway, here's how it goes. The latest tale of record company filthy behavior and disgusting absolute lack of ethics. 1972. David Bowie is the rage. Somehow, this overtly faggy, heavily made up, rooster-haired, coiffed, swishing, pale, effeminate Englishman is able to sell boatloads of records to middle America and sell out big venues from coast to coast. How did he do it? Well, he was awesome. That's how he did it. We're talking about David Bowie here. I mean, come on. The man's got so much charisma, you can't even measure it with a Geiger counter. One of the best songwriters who ever lived. and a master of imagery. His image was so carefully, I won't say contrived, but so carefully constructed that when coupled with his songwriting and his charisma and the fact that he always had a crack band backing him up and producers and collaborators to bolster his vision, David Bowie was the real deal. He was the whole package, gang. David Bowie. So you've got this really unlikely creature selling tons and tons and tons and tons of records. So the major labels, as they always do, are scrambling to find somebody who can sell records like David Bowie. Who can we find? We need a fag. Okay, he's got to be a fag. Okay, it's got to be pale. It's got to be from outer space. What else? Let's see, fag, pale, outer space. That's all we need. That's good. Find a homosexual from outer space who's pale. Oh, and it plays music and can, write songs and record. So, but I got to tell you, those are some very limited criteria. You're not going to go to your average Holiday Inn in Peoria and find a pale, effeminate spaceman swishing around singing Misty. It's relatively easy to find guys, to fill the role of Elvis Costello and Joe Jackson and Graham Parsons. You can find dudes like that, but where do you find a David Bowie? That's a tough one. That's a real tough one. And when you're as greedy and short-sighted and so filthily consumed with making a quick buck and so desperate, you lose sight of all reality. And so you end up, as my main man James Pogo just pointed out, you find people like Joe Bryant. And I've talked about Joe Bryant before on a previous episode of Tent Talks Tunes. Look up Joe Bryant. It's a hell of a story. And Joe Bryant was quite a personality. Joe Bryant, one word. Joe Bryant. And he sold about maybe 0.1% of the number of records that David Bowie did. In spite of the fact that he was gay and pale, and it's he had all the marketable commodities, they thought, but he couldn't sell records. In fact, just to show you how hypocritical and without honor the record companies are, the label he was signed to, Elektra Records, I read an interview with some Elektra Records stuffed shirt who actually apologized for issuing the Joe Bryant albums. What a load of fucking bullshit. Because if Joe Bryant had sold a bunch of records, that same record company asshole would be taking sole credit for the career of Joe Bryant, the flaming gay spaceman who knocked David Bowie off his pedestal. That idiot would be taking full credit. But no, Joe Bryant didn't sell any records, so that guy is apologizing for releasing a record on his label. Fuck you, man. Seriously. If you had any integrity, you would stand by your artist and defend him. You know what I mean? You don't apologize for releasing a record because it didn't sell. You say, well, we signed Joe Bryant. Maybe we had our money on the wrong horse, but we tried. We really tried. Nope, they don't operate that way. Success has a million parents. Failure is an orphan. True in the case of Joe Bryant, and not really true in the case of Dorian. Not quite true in the case of Dorian. Dorian is one of those guys who've been knocking around New York City forever. He's one of those guys who you'll be reading an old issue of like Rock Scene or Village Voice or East Village Eye or whatever, and you'll see the name Dorian will pop up. Dorian played at Max's Kansas City. Dorian was spotted at this cabaret. Dorian was seen hanging out with David Johansen. Dorian was, he's just one of those guys who's like always in a byline somewhere, and just this kind of name who's just kind of popping up all over the place. I never even knew Dorian actually did an album until I found this at the flea market for $1. I found a few copies of this record for $1 each at the flea market. I do remember, and I might even have this somewhere. Hope I do. I wish I do. Dorian was interviewed in Punk magazine, the immortal Punk magazine with Legs and McNeil, John Holmstrom. They interviewed this guy, and they, in typical Punk fashion, ran the funniest interview ever. I'm sure it's out there somewhere. Look up the Dorian interview in Punk magazine. It's hilarious. Had no idea the guy actually released a record, but here it is. Here's the record. It's Dorian. And in the Punk magazine interview, pretty sure it was in that one, it might have been somewhere else, Dorian went through great pains to say, well, you know, if they want a gay rock star, I'm the gayest of them all. There's nobody more gay than I am. All right, so any record company would say, oh, he's gay. Well, it's just like David Bowie. Well, maybe not like Joe Bryant, but, yeah, like David Bowie. But as is apparent in the punk rock interview, old Dorian apparently had a real talent for shooting himself in the foot. And so he never got signed to a major. And according to one interview or story or something I read somewhere, he had rich parents who would bankroll his whims. And so on this label, which I think only released one record ever, Amarama Records, and you see its catalog number 1001. That kind of indicates you got to start somewhere. So Amarama started with 1001. They did the Dorian record, in which he, of course, thanks nobody but himself. I have no one to thank for this album but myself. All right, cool. No thanks, no listen. Nah, I'm not that cruel. I, of course, listen to the damn thing. Oh, it's good. It's real good. Dreams of Mr. Pitiful, Silver Stringed Marionette. My favorite, once again, track 1, side 1, awesome tune called Men's Room. You thought Kiss had all the bathroom songs locked up with their song Ladies' Room? Nope. Dorian's got his ode to the men's room. And it's really something. It falls into the category of you gotta hear it to believe it. And even if you hear it, you probably still won't believe it. Dorian, the man who would have been Joe Bryant, who was the man who would have been David Bowie. And Dorian died, as so often happens, too young and under tragic circumstances. I would never, ever, ever wish ill on anybody. You know, same thing with Joe Bryant. Joe Bryant was one of the first AIDS casualties. And that's horrible. You know, that's terrible. That's awful. I would never, you know, it's like I also want to be clear, I'm not making fun of anybody. I never make fun of these people. I prefer to think of my attitude as irreverent. If Dorian were still here, I would love to talk to Dorian and grill him about his career. I would love it. But let's face it, the whole thing's kind of silly. That's why I love it. That's why I listen to it. It's so bad, it's good. And as I've so often said, bad is not worthless. Bad is not worthless. Bad is quite often better than what the tastemakers say is good. I'll take Dorian over Lady Gaga any day of the week and 7 times on Sunday. This is a lot more interesting. So no, I'm not mocking. Do not mock. I love it. I appreciate it for its absurdity as much as I appreciate the absurdity of this scrawny specimen being able to go on live on Facebook and talk to people about music that I enjoy. That's absurd, kids. So yeah, a big toast to absurdity. Everybody out there, thank you for helping me be absurd. I appreciate it. Hey, Greg Schmidt's tuned in. Greg is my friend who has a really cool podcast of his own called Noise in the Attic. Earlier, I don't know, Greg, if you were tuned in. Greg, were you tuned in? when I was talking about DC Star, this is the kind of stuff, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Greg is all about the hard rock and the hair metal and the glam, and he gets deep into it, and he talks to people like that and interviews them and does a really good show about that. So if you want to check stuff like that out, look up Noise in the Attic. It's a podcast. It's there. It's not my kind of music, but it gets a thumbs up because he does a real good job. So salute, Greg. And also, there's Paul. Hello. Oh, okay. Paul says that Amorama had a number of different artists on the label, but Dorian was the first. All right, we got to research that. Totally got to research that. Cool. And I think that's about it for me, man. I'm done for tonight. I want to thank everybody for suggesting D as being the topic of a conversation. It was a very good conversation. I had a lot of fun with it. And look out for interviews coming up on the Malcolm Tent Shoot interview series. I try to run them on Sundays. I don't do them every Sunday because, time is just a little bit short. But I've got interviews with former Trash American Style employee John Howard. We're going to be talking about the Danbury scene of the 90s coming up. We've got Mad Brother Ward, my cohort in the Almighty Anti-Scene, talking about the deep, deep, deep history of him and that particular band. And we've got Bob Lewis, the co-founder of Devo, airing in a future episode of the Shoot interview series. So plenty of stuff to keep you guys busy here in the new normal. So check me out on Facebook, YouTube. Let's keep the absurdity going. I'm all about there we go, kind of. A for absurdity. It's my stock in trade. So I do hope to be back in about 167 hours' time. Until we meet again, this is Malcolm Tent saying so long from the Nutmeg State.